Welcome back to What She Said Sports, everybody. This Shanola girl. Get in here because we got to talk. All right. So y'all know we watched NFL preseason game for the Panthers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we kind of touched on the revelations that Eric Dickerson made today regarding Shedeur Sanders being blackballed by the NFL, right? Telling people, the Cleveland Browns in particular, don't pick him. Don't pick him. And he was like, they weren't going to pick him. Don't pick him. So I already see people running around trying to dispel it. But, hey, I got notes, right? So we're finna take a look at these notes. We're finna talk about this. There's a pattern here that is emerging that what Eric Dickerson said, what happened to Mike Tomlin, why they were getting ready to pick for Shedeur and why they went away from Shedeur, what Boomer Esiason confessed to, and now, you got Eric Dickerson, Mel Kiper Jr. Before the combine, Mel Kiper Jr. on Phil Yates' podcast. The NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. Then we get Boomer Esiason telling us what happened, that they took him off the board. Just straight up confession, right? Then Mike Tomlin tells us after the draft, before Boomer confesses, that there were these phone calls, and we had to listen to these phone calls. And the other guy was still there, so we took him. So it's not hard to understand what Eric Dickerson is saying is true, because it fits the pattern of behavior that's been taking place with Shedeur. We're starting to see that people are coming out and telling the truth, and it's aligning with the other events that have taken place, right? So we're going to listen to what Eric Dickerson said, but there's somebody on the screen we're going to talk about, and it explains why he looks stoic. His name is Albert Breer. We have talked about this. If you've been following this channel, everything that we've been talking about is rising to the surface. Did we talk about Eric Dickerson? No, because he didn't say nothing. But we did talk about Mike Tomlin. We did talk about how the media did a hit job on Shedeur. We did name some media people. We talked about how Mel Kiper Jr. said an NFL insider told him before the combine that the NFL did not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. They didn't say a quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. And Mel Kiper Jr. went on while he was on Phil Yates' podcast and thought that maybe they were talking about, oh, you want the running around guy because Shedeur Sanders is a pocket passer. And Mel Kiper Jr. spent the rest of that podcast showing why pocket passers have been great for the NFL. And if you notice, Andrew Berry, something we also shared, Andrew Berry said that after the draft, when they had their first pre-draft, post-draft press conference, that Shedeur Sanders had a retro style pocket passer, which meant his skills are outdated, which meant that was the justification for why he's in the 5th round. And none of it's true, because he's proven that he can use his legs just like he ran for his life at CU for 2 years. So now Albert Breer is sitting on the Dan Patrick show trying to dispel yet another revelation. We're at 4 now. Mel Kiper Jr., before the combine, the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. Mike Tomlin, in the draft, there were these phone calls. We had to listen to these phone calls. Boomer Esiason, the owners took him off the board. He's entitled. I don't blame them. And now, Eric Dickerson, there were these phone calls saying to Cleveland, don't draft him. Who do you think they called? You think they called Haslam? No, because Haslam with the owners are what? Incestuously close. So Chris Carter is on somebody else's podcast saying that it's not true. The owners didn't collude, because how could they keep a secret? And why would they do that? Because they compete for talent. The collusion case, the 61-page collusion case just proved that that's a lie. They collude for talent. They restrict movement, which is what collusion is. It is against the law. It is illegal. We already knew they took Shedeur off the board. We already knew it's documented. They locked Shedeur out of the first round of the draft by saying he wasn't good enough to get a first round score. And the owners took him off the board because he's entitled. Something the New York Giants said. So let's talk about the media who did a hit job on Shedeur, who one member of the media is sitting on Dan Patrick's show trying to call what Eric Dickerson said another revelation that the NFL colluded against Shedeur Sanders, a conspiracy theory. That's what people say when they don't want to say it's the truth. So let's take a look at what Albert Breer said about Shedeur. But first, let's take a look at the clip from the Dan Patrick show. I'm like, bruh, the truth is coming to light and they working hard to stop it. But hey, it's coming. Remember, 2,000 people got an email with Shedeur Sanders' draft phone number that landed in the hands of a young man that's supposedly dating the daughter of the New York Giants, the only franchise to defame Shedeur Sanders. It's all coming together, people, and we've been talking about it. So this new piece has been documented by Eric Dickerson as yet another revelation. But the fact that the NFL could have one of its insiders, and we got a list of insiders. We got a list of insiders we're going to look at. All you got to do is look at the things they said about Shedeur during the draft. If an NFL insider who has inside information can tell Mel Kiper Jr. before the combine, we don't want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now in the 2025 draft. Why you drafting? Better yet, why you invite him to the combine? So you could humiliate him? So you could destroy him? I mean, what else would you invite somebody that you don't want? You don't want this person to be a part of your league, but you invite him to the combine. Yeah. Guilty. And that lawsuit, I don't know where it's at. But it's two of them out there now. It's two claims of racial discrimination. This should be a third. Take a listen. Let me set it up for you. I want you to see who's on the screen, and we're going to talk about what they said about Shedeur during the draft, and it will explain to you why he's running around trying to say that the NFL colluded against Shedeur Sanders. There were these phone calls. We had to listen to these phone calls, and the other guy was still there, so we took him. The question is, why did the NFL feel the need to tell Andrew Berry, who's a black GM, what to do in the draft? And why did they feel the need to have somebody running around to Mike Tomlin and Andrew Berry, two black men in leadership in NFL, the only two that were told what to do? They said Andrew Berry was going to get scammed out of their pick, which means they think he's stupid. And they told Mike Tomlin to draft Shedeur and make him QB2. But see, that wasn't good enough on draft day. On draft day, there were these phone calls. And I'm sure the phone calls weren't in private. Those phone calls were meant to intimidate Andrew Berry and Mike Tomlin. If either one of y'all draft Shedeur, you're going to lose your job. That's what that was. Intimidation. Why did nobody else get those phone calls? So we finna get into this. Now, I want you to see who's on the screen. Let me make sure that y'all can see my screen. Hold on one second. Okay. On this screen, you're looking at Eric Dickerson. He's a Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame NFL. That's who's doing the speaking. And of course, you see Shedeur there, right? Who's going to emerge on the screen is Dan Patrick, whose show it was on, and Albert Breer. We're going to look at the commentary that Albert Breer posted and published about Shedeur Sanders during the draft, and it might explain to you the look on his face. Take a listen.
I'll tell you this much here, what I heard from someone that's in the NFL, that the NFL told other, don't draft him. Do not draft him. We're gonna make an example out of him. And this came from a very good source, And he said that, I won't say who, somebody called the Cleveland Browns and said, don't do that. Draft
Really?
him. Yep, draft him. Don't do that. Because they weren't gonna draft him either. They weren't gonna draft him. And I'll tell you this much here, what I heard from someone that's in the NFL, that the NFL told other, don't draft him. Do not draft him. We're gonna make an example out of him. And this came from a very good source, And he said that, I won't say who, somebody called the Cleveland Browns and said, don't do that. Draft
Really?
him. Yep, draft him. Don't do that. Because they weren't going to draft him either. They weren't going to draft him. And I'll tell you this much here, what I heard from someone that's in the NFL.
So that's Albert Breer on the bottom of the screen. That was Albert Breer on the bottom of your screen, okay? So over to the right, gentleman that did like this, that looks stoic, right? So let's take a look at the names of some NFL insiders, and then we're gonna take a look at some of the commentary that Albert Breer, who's on that screen with Dan Patrick, who went on to refute further on into the show, saying, trying to downplay not conspiracy theories. These are not conspiracy theories. All Eric Dickerson is confirming is what Boomer Esiason said. The owners took him off the board because he's entitled. And Boomer Esiason agreed with the owners that took him off the board. Is Haslam not an owner? Did he say Shedeur was not his pick? Okay, then. And don't forget, the Cleveland Browns pre-draft was Shedeur extensively at the number 2 overall pick, although they have never had a first-round draft pick be a quarterback in the entire existence of this organization. So these are some of the NFL insiders. Now remember, Mel Kiper Jr., before the combine, said an NFL insider told him that the NFL does not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. And this was ahead of the combine, ahead of the 2025 draft. Adam Schefter. You have already seen me tell you that Adam Schefter was one of the people that reported that the Cleveland Browns were going to take a quarterback at number 2, and Shedeur Sanders was the guy they were considering. But now, all of a sudden, they don't think he's good. How the hell did he go from being one of the best to he's suddenly not good? When you look at the fact that Eric Dickerson is saying that people ran around and told Cleveland not to pick him, and Mike Tomlin is on the record having said there were these phone calls. We had to listen to these phone calls, and the other guy was still available. See, that's how Shedeur got to 144, because the owners took him off the board because he was entitled. That came right off the mouths of the New York Giants. Remember, the same New York Giants who the daughter of the GM, her boyfriend is the one you see calling Shedeur in the video with the Ole Miss sweatshirt. That's who that is, which explains how he get the number, because Shedeur only had GMs and executives in that phone. It also explains how it is the supposed boyfriend of the daughter of the GM knew that Shedeur was not getting picked by the Saints. That was inside information. It's all coming together. So Chris Carter and Albert Breer can save it because it's all publicly documented and it's in the hands of the general public. It's not. This is no longer a secret within the NFL. The secret is slowly being exposed. That what is obvious is that the best quarterback coming out of college was manipulated and pigeonholed to the Cleveland Browns, who have never drafted a black quarterback in the first round. And they used Deshaun Watson as a scapegoat to say, this is why we can't get Shedeur. And when they pivoted for Shedeur, it was around April 4th, CU Pro Day. And they, on April 11th, they went to get Flacco. They are already secretly, privately pre-drafting with Dylan Gabriel. So the guy that they have as their franchise QB on their roster is the same guy that they were going to get at number 2. There's no conspiracy here. This is no conspiracy here. So these NFL insiders, is it one of these NFL insiders that told Mel Kiper Jr.? Was it Adam Schefter, Chris Mortensen, Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, Mike Garofalo, or Louis Riddick, or Judy Batista? Was it one of them that told Mel Kiper Jr. the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now? And if it was, all you got to go do look at every piece they wrote about Shedeur. That's all you have to do. So an insider said before the combine, an insider on the level of these people right here said before the combine that the NFL don't want quarterbacks like Shedeur. So why did the NFL invite quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders to the NFL combine? If you notice, that's where all of the hatred started. Oh, he's cocky. Oh, this, that, and the other. They're not going to get out of this. They're not going to get out of this. Because why did you draft him if you didn't want him? DNVR just posted today. It is so obvious that something rogue went on with Shedeur Sanders. And instead of mistreating him, how about you just not draft him before the combine? They didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders. Now, Mel Kiper Jr. felt like that had something to do with they rather have a dual threat quarterback, or they don't want Shedeur because his pocket passing skills are outdated. Pay attention to how hard they tried to pigeonhole Shedeur as the pocket passer. He got a weak arm. His pocket presence isn't good. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at what Albert Breer, who's sitting right there on the screen, who has a vested interest of saying that is a conspiracy theory. Let's look at what the hell it is he said about Shedeur. And you can figure out where he got his information from. All right. So I'm going to have to move myself off the screen to make it larger so y'all can see what is here. So this is Albert Breer's commentary about Shedeur Sanders. This is available for anybody. This is available for anybody on the internet. Okay? This is available for anybody on the internet. It says, Albert Breer commentary about Shedeur, the pre-draft concerns, talent versus NFL fit. Breer, the guy on the screen on Dan Patrick's show, saying what Eric Dickerson said was a conspiracy, which means he calling it a lie. Breer suggested that Sanders' talent and performance in college, particularly in a weaker conference, factored into his slide out of the first round. So because he was in the Big 12, he slid out of the first round. When in fact, it's documented, he was locked out of the first round. It said the draft process. Breer indicated that Sanders' approach to interviews, including particularly narrowing the pool of teams he was willing to meet with, negatively impacted his draft stock. And it says mental processing. Now, I will tell you this. Shedeur met with 3 or 4 teams. Only one team was negative. That was the New York Giants. The Titans met with him. The Giants met with him. And the Giants came back at the last minute and met with Shedeur again. Cleveland met with him. Nothing negative to say. Pittsburgh met with him. Nothing negative to say. The Titans met with Shedeur multiple times. Nothing negative to say. It's all documented. The positive things that they have all said are documented, be audio or print. So the only team who had anything negative to say about Shedeur Sanders interviews is who? The New York Giants. Do not forget, the caller from Ole Miss is connected to the New York Giants and is supposed to be the boyfriend of the daughter of the New York Giants GM. And it was said that when the prank went viral, the daughter actually liked the prank because her boyfriend is supposedly the one that made the call. And he went to Ole Miss, and the Ole Miss connection through the New York Giants runs through Jackson Dart and the Manning family. And Tyler Shaw has a relationship with Archie Manning of the Saints. That is how Jackson Dart and Tyler Shaw get to their respective teams ahead of Shedeur. Mental processing. Breer also highlighted that in pre-draft interviews, Sanders showed a lag in mental processing, even failing to call out intentionally placed mistakes in play installs, according to NBC Sports Boston. One more time. Breer also highlighted that in pre-draft interviews, Sanders showed a lag in mental processing. What do we say about the NFL and race, Norman? That they settled a $1 billion lawsuit violating the civil rights of all Black NFL players by maintaining that Black NFL players have a lower cognitive functioning, i.e., a lag in mental processing. This is racism off the plantation. Even failing to call out intentionally placed mistakes and play installs. Now, how would he know? Because the New York Giants told that to him? Nobody else even said anything like that. other than the New York Giants. So that's why Albert Breer is sitting there with that look on his face. Post-draft commentary. Operational lag. After being drafted by the Browns, Breer pointed out that Sanders was behind his fellow rookie quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, in operating the offense and had work to catch up. How does he know that? Was he there? Let me guess. Stefanski told him. And operational lag. Keyword lag. Go back to Race Norman. It said lots of ground to make up. Breer stated that Sanders had a lot of ground to make up to become a first-team quarterback, a situation not entirely his fault, but stemming from the difference in his preparation compared to Gabriel. Well, that has been pointed out to be a lie. These are things they planted in the media between the Browns organization and Albert Breer to defame Shedeur and try to justify why a first-round pick who should have been on that Heisman stage, but was also blocked by Dylan Gabriel, also blocked by Gabriel on the Heisman stage and on the Browns roster, not a coincidence, is number 4 because 17-32. This is not about Shedeur Sanders at all. And when he got out there and balled out, despite the fact that he was underprepared, had him throwing to equipment managers, people they sent his phone number to with a waiver wire indicating that he's going to be cut. All of the bullying that has happened to Shedeur Sanders, and he still got out there and balled out, despite a rogue play by Stefanski with the 4th and 1 call with 74 blowing his coverage. They all working together to not just end this young man's career, but they do this to other people too. It's at a potential for a superstar backup label. What did you hear me say earlier? Mike Tomlin was advised to draft Shedeur Sanders as a QB2 behind Aaron Rodgers. Shedeur ain't nobody's backup. They don't want him to be a starter. In fact, they don't want quarterbacks like him in the league. So why the hell did you invite him and quarterbacks like him to the combine? Because we know you're not talking about dual threat versus pocket passer. We know Shedeur don't have no outdated retro style pocket passer styles. Because what the hell is Joe Flacco? We know that that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about black quarterbacks. And the reason why the NFL don't want no black quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now is because starting quarterbacks are becoming a minority. 17-32. Shedeur was supposed to be 17. Cam was 16. Shedeur pigeonholed to 17 because the lie didn't work with 16. It didn't work with Cam at 17. It had to be 17, which was the Cleveland Browns. And they knew this since Vegas Super Bowl. Just like they knew Shedeur in October 2024 was the number 1 quarterback coming out of college. But that would have made him 16. So they kicked him off the Heisman stage and started trashing his skill set to make him drop. And they pigeonholed with the Browns' help. Oh, we interested in you. We want you to be our number 2. But then they changed their mind not 20 days before the draft. And they go with Flacco and Dylan Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. And now they trying to hold Shedeur back for dear life behind the 3 of them when Shedeur is better than all of them. So a potential for a superstar backup label, which means they've been pigeonholing him to be a backup since before the combine. Breer also mentioned that in the NFL, there are superstar backup concerns for quarterbacks, a label he felt he could apply to Sanders, similarly to Colin Kaepernick and Tim Tebow. I don't know Tim Tebow, and I never saw Colin Kaepernick play, but I know that's some bullshit. They dragged Shedeur down to make sure he wasn't the first quarterback coming out of college because he would have to go to the Titans. And the Titans wanted to get rid of that pick. They didn't even want to get Cam. Everybody want to wait till next year to get a white quarterback because they already have them propped up. Every quarterback going through the Manning Passing Academy, you're going to find on these teams at the top of the draft. And only one of them is black. That's a reversal of the last 4 or 5 years with an average of 3 quarterbacks coming out in the first round. First round QBs are inherent QB1s. If Shedeur was on the Heisman stage, how could he not be the first pick overall? high floor. Despite the criticism, Breer noted Sanders has a high floor, implying he has a high probability of not being a bust and is likely to make the Browns roster. Let me tell y'all something. It's a lot of people working overtime. It's a lot of people, Chris Carter, Albert Breer, and others. It's a lot of people working overtime to make sure that Shedeur does not get to QB1. And while they over there holding Shedeur back, Spencer Rattler is about to take QB1 in New Orleans away from Tyler Shaw, their preference pick, who has a relationship with the Mannings. And Jackson Dart tonight, I watched as we were live, we were keeping an eye on the New York game, and it looked like Jackson Dart was going to be better than Jameis Winston until Tommy DeVito showed up and balled the hell out, 11 of 12, 2 touchdowns. So it should be Russell Wilson the starter with Tommy DeVito second, with Jackson Dart third, with Jameis Winston fourth. But the league has a vested interest in Jackson Dart being ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And it's not just because he's a preference pick. It's because they couldn't justify drafting Jackson Dart, who nobody ever said was better than Shedeur Sanders. There was no justification for Tyler Shaw going before Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is a dual threat. They said Shedeur Sanders is a pure pocket passer, which isn't true. And if the NFL don't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, and you snub Milroe, who's a dual threat comparable to Lamar Jackson and Michael Vick, and you snub Shedeur Sanders comparable to Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes, then what the hell kind of quarterbacks do you want? So these are not conspiracy theories. These are the truth. These are truths. Mel Kiper Jr. said it first before the combine. The NFL does not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. Why 2025? Because 17 to 32 was going to take place with Shedeur at 17, pigeonholed to Cleveland. So for Cleveland to be over there acting like they don't know who Shedeur is more of a fraud. Just like they pre-draft with him under false pretenses, knowing they've never had a black quarterback drafted in the first round. It was all a setup. And the truth is coming out. Mike Tomlin, there were these phone calls. Eric Dickerson, phone calls. Boomer Esiason, the owners took him off the board because he entitled. The New York Giants, that's what they said. Albert Breer repeated everything the New York Giants said. This don't have nothing to do with Coach Prime. But the CU program was collateral damage, just like Coach Prime was made a scapegoat so they could hide their racism. It's a shame what they did to Shedeur because they don't want quarterbacks like him now. So why did you invite him and quarterbacks like him to the combine? The NFL needs to answer for that. Choosing to humiliate somebody, lie on them, defame them, devalue them so you could bury them on the depth chart and use the media to do a hit job to kill their careers because you don't want black quarterbacks to be 17, 18, 19, or 20, or 32. Just stop drafting black quarterbacks and they'll go start their own league. But that's what you don't want. And you don't want them going to Canada or the UFL. So you're trying to turn the UFL into a G League. If I have any advice for these players, start your own league. You are the talent. So Shedeur was out today doing what he loves, right? Being out with the kids because that matters to him, right? And I think, I saw him out at a game, St. Ignatius versus Avon. It's a high school football game. Shedeur was at St. Ignatius versus Avon, a high school football game, right? And, he said he wanted to figure out how to get the kids free tickets. He's a kind heart. He loves the kids, the next generation. He's a great kid. He really is. He's not 25 yet. Frontal lobe, not fully developed. He handled this situation well. Cleveland wanted to use a caption that said, he learned life in a different perspective. I know he learned about some racism that he probably never experienced. the extremes that people have gone through, the NFL, the Cleveland Browns, to hold back this young man when they never had to draft him or Jalen Milroe or Cam Ward. They have Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick, competing with the guy that failed. And when he hurt his shoulder, they have him competing with a third string backup. That doesn't happen to QB1s. That's why they couldn't let Shedeur get drafted in the first round or the second round or the third round. That's why he being held so far back on the depth chart, because they know he's that good. Andrew Berry said it post-draft press conference. We know Shedeur is going to outproduce his draft stock. They know he's good. But they holding him back anyway. So out at a local high school football game with the kids, I think when he does things like that, it's really good for him. He did really well in his interviews. And, he said it. They just giving me more time to cook. Right. And it's true. They held off 17-32 in the draft with Cam stopping at 16. But they having a damn tough time right now. They're at 15 because they took Anthony Richardson's job and gave it to Daniel Jones, who got 6 years to fail, who they wouldn't let compete with J.J. McCarthy, who had 0 seconds of film on beginning his second year in the NFL. They have set up a system of Jim Crow. Shedeur won the competition twice. It don't matter. Shedeur will never be good enough for the Browns because he's a black franchise QB. You don't want that. They've never had one, and they don't want one. The truth finally came out. Kimberly Martin on ESPN. Andrew Berry did not pick Deshaun Watson. Haslam did, supposedly. Andrew Berry did not have the authority to give Deshaun Watson $230 million. And as hurt as all of those QBs are over there, the Cleveland Browns did not take a big swing and miss with Deshaun. That's the excuse they use to pivot away from their number 2 overall pick for over 3/4 of the pre-draft process. At the last minute, they went and got Dillon. And now they keeping Shedeur behind Dillon like they don't know who the hell Shedeur Sanders is. Not a coincidence that Dillon is the wedge blocking Shedeur off the Heisman stage. Had Shedeur made it to the Heisman stage, it would have been Shedeur, Travis, Ashton Jeanty, and Cam Ward. That's 4 black Heisman candidates on the stage. I don't know if that's a first, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. This is about racism. And they're using stereotypes, persistent stereotypes that other black quarterbacks have had to endure. But the lowest blow is talking about his mental processing. They said the same thing about Lamar Jackson, the same thing about C.J. Stroud. The NFL don't want these young black quarterbacks coming into the league now because they will become the majority. 17, 18, 19, 20 of 32 starting black quarterbacks, which means when you turn on your TV to watch a game, you're going to see pairings of black quarterback after black quarterback after black quarterback playing each other game after game, week after week after week. They could be bold with it 9 decades ago when they banned black quarterbacks. But they're not being subtle with it right now. They feel like they can let that flag fly. I'm going to remind them. Racism is expensive. So everybody you see defending, calling what happened to Shedeur, that the truth is coming out, a conspiracy, is lying. It's not a conspiracy. That's exactly what happened. What Boomer Esiason said is true. What Mel Kiper Jr. said is true. What Mike Tomlin said is true. What Eric Dickerson said is true. They knew before college football season 2024 started that any of the 2 or more black quarterbacks coming out of college was going to tip the majority to 17-32 for black starters, because elite elite quarterbacks come out in the first round, and first round QBs are inherent QB1, expected to make an impact in that season that they are drafted. So they manipulated it in college, blaming Milroe, trash and Shedeur. That's 2. Cam is 16. Milroe and Shedeur 17 and 18. And I said it. Okay, you got your way in the draft. Let me see what you're going to do in the season. They fighting it like hell. Spencer Rattler, Shedeur, Anthony Richardson. Somebody going to get injured. Somebody going to have to take a seat. And 17 to 32 is going to happen. One way or the other. Because you're trying to stop progress. But you want to make money off of it at the same time. So let me see what y'all are saying. Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for the sticker. Thank you for the sticker, Ben. I'm like, what they doing and how hard they working. Yeah. These guys need to go start their own league. And this is why. They just going to keep lying. Just keep lying and keep on with the same behavior. And that's all it is to it. So the person you see on the screen saying Eric Dickerson is not telling the truth, it's a conspiracy theory, is the one that's not telling the truth. And you just got to look at all of the hit pieces they did on Shedeur. That's why they are staunchly defending it, because they guilty too. Hey, Tina, we back. Yep, we're back. Hit the like button. Hey, Esley, how you doing? Hey, Chris, how you doing? How you doing? It said I ran over here so fast after the notification because I know you heard what Eric Dickerson said. Yep. I don't doubt it at all. Eric Dickerson dropped the bomb. He sure did. He sure did. I was just watching his interview. He has no reason to lie. Right. They already got Chris Carter trying to say they couldn't keep a secret like that and the owners compete. The first collusion case that we know about, 61-page document, proves that they don't even compete for talent. They collude for talent. They restrict the movement of players. It said the floodgates are opening. Facts. The heavens are opening, and it's raining like hell here in Atlanta too. It said, yep, everyone is talking about Eric's statement. It said the media all look guilty when they react his words. It said especially the ones who fake their friendship with these. It said the prank call, the fall, Haslam saying not my pick, all adds up 12. It said don't mess with God's anointed. That's it. That's it. Nobody working as hard as you. Thank you. We have been talking about this for so long. Hey Sonya, how you doing? It said, yeah, a Hall of Famer, Eric Dickerson, no reason to lie. Right. And he's not the first person to say it. Right. They just want you to not know what Mike Tomlin said after the draft. They want you to forget what Boomer Esiason said. Right. What did Boomer Esiason say? They said, the owner said they didn't entitle so-and-so off the board. And he said he agreed. And I was like, thank you. So everything that Eric Dickerson said got his phone number that worked for the email, that got an email that worked for the NFL, right? So all 2,000 people probably opened their email at some point. It was like, what the hell is this about? They knew because they knew what was happening in the draft. When Coach Prime said he was taking off a week ahead of the bull jump, yeah. It said Molly from Cleveland Browns News, reporter heavily ties to the Browns, stated Browns were told to draft Shedeur for Sanders suffering. Now, they the ones that created the suffering. Ask them why they didn't draft him at number 2 overall and why he's on their bench for $4 million at pick 144. Why they act like he's not good. See, you can't interview with somebody 3/4 of the process for $46 million and go away from them and get somebody that's less than and band-aid it together with Flacco, 2% battery lifer. I like Flacco, but that's what he is. He hadn't played a full season since 2017. So you know Dylan is not better than Shedeur. You know Flacco can't play a whole season. So you scoop down. Andrew Berry was asked on camera, recorded, on day 3, when you get to the draft, you get to work. What do you think when Shedeur Sanders is still on the board? Nonchalantly, we just going to see how far he falls. That's expectation. No sense of urgency until the sense of urgency came. It wasn't to relieve his suffering. The Browns caused his suffering, much like they are now. I know Shedeur was confused when he got to Cleveland and thought that he could sigh a breath of relief because the people he pre-draft with, 3/4 of the pre-draft process, is where he landed. They know who he is. He wouldn't have to prove himself. In fact, Stefanski and Andrew Berry said, we know exactly who Shedeur is. We know he's going to come in here. He's going to work hard. We know he's going to outproduce his draft stock. So if you know all of that, why are you treating him like he's not good? Honestly, that's a real question, right? Why are you treating him
we
like
talk
he's not good?
oftentimes about quarterback being the most important position in the sport. We obviously spend a lot of time with Shedeur throughout the process. He's highly accurate, can play well from the pocket, very productive college career, and we felt like it wasn't necessarily the plan going into the weekend to select 2 quarterbacks, but as we talked, we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the 5th round. Like he was a good, solid prospect at the most important position. We felt like it got to a point where he was probably mispriced, relative to the draft.
He was probably mispriced relative to the draft. He too expensive for the first round. But then they have him over there for a string, and they know he's good. He was just too expensive. So if he's too expensive and you get him at 144 for $4 million, why are you pretending like he's not good? Why are you pretending like his pocket passing skill set is outdated, but you got Joe Flacco for his? If you got Joe Flacco to replace Shedeur because Flacco was $4 million and you give him up to $13 million in incentives, and then you get Shedeur for $4 million, then why would you put Shedeur out there and use Flacco as a safety blanket? Because you don't want Shedeur to be QB1, which is why you pretended to be interested in him in the first round, although you've never drafted a black quarterback in the first round ever. In fact, you have never had a black franchise quarterback. And the only quarterback that come close to playing, I guess, games that you paid a lot of money to, you just happen to end up with and pay him $230 million, which is essentially giving him all his money back after he asked for a trade in Houston. Yeah, okay. So he's trying to say Shedeur was too expensive, but they sure didn't seem happy they got him for cheap.
Really the acquisition cost was pretty light, and it's a guy that we think can outproduce his draft stock.
We've spent a lot of time with Shedeur. We know what he's about. He's coming in here to work just like all of our other guys.
We view him as a highly accurate pocket passer. He does physical characteristics, whether it's arm strength or mobility. Like all young players, there are things to improve. I think probably much has been said about the number of sacks he's taken. Some of that is environment, and some of that is his improvement on his end, for sure. But he has probably a little bit more of a, call it retro or classic style of play. Our message to him is really all of this, like, look, got to come in, nothing's given. The interviews, they're quarterback being the most important position in the sport.
You got to come in, you got to work. You got to come in, you got to work, you got to compete. He came in, he worked, he competed, he won twice, and he's still being held back. What does Stefanski say? Oh, we know exactly who Shedeur is. We know he's going to come in and he's going to work like the rest of our other guys. But he's being treated like he asked for something.
We obviously spent a lot of time with Shedeur throughout the process.
We obviously spent a lot of time with Shedeur throughout the pre-draft process. That means they know exactly who he is. So why are they treating him?
He's highly accurate, can play well from the pocket. He felt like it wasn't necessarily the plan going into the weekend to select 2 quarterbacks, but as we talked he was a good, solid prospect.
They treat him like he's a
probably
throwaway,
mispriced, you know,
right?
relative to the draft. Really the acquisition cost was pretty light, and it's a guy that we think can outproduce his draft
I've
stock.
spent a lot of time with Shedeur. We know what he's about. He's coming in here to work just like all of our other players.
We view him as a highly accurate pocket passer. He does a really good job of protecting, but he has probably a little bit more of a, call it retro or classic style.
Like he's
of
outdated.
Play. Our message to him is really all this. Like, got to come in. Nothing's given.
Nothing's given, like he's entitled. So they're continuing the same language from the draft, from the New York Giants. He's entitled. They're continuing the same language from the draft, from the Giants, and this is Cleveland. He's at another team, and they're using the same language, and the man had never even set foot in Cleveland at this point. But we know exactly who Shedeur is. He's going to come in. He's going to work hard. So how is he entitled if you know he's going to come in, he's going to work hard? How is he not good if you know he's going to outproduce his draft stock?
The interviews, they're a small piece of it. We certainly do rely a lot more heavily, on our reference work for people who have been with the prospect for 2, 3, 4 years after school. We feel good
So
with
they rely heavily on talking to people who have been with the prospect 2, 3, 4 years. That's going back to Jackson State. So they wasn't so worried about the interviews, and a lot of teams said they don't really worry about those interviews, but they do get reference statements. So he's letting you know they went back to Jackson State, or as far as Jackson State.
as a person. He works hard. He's a really good kid.
He's worked hard. He's a really good kid.
He wants to be great. His teammates loved him in Colorado, and I know he'll come in here ready to work, ready to try and put his best foot forward.
So they know,
Then,
they know he's a good kid, wants to be great, will come in, put his best foot forward. Teammates at Colorado loved him, didn't rely so much on the interviews, had reference statements, will outproduce his draft stock. Know he's going to work hard, but nothing will be given. They were just calling him entitled, which meant Shedeur got forced to Cleveland. That's why Andrew Berry had a sense of urgency and expended 2 draft picks in the same round to get Shedeur after he showed up that day and was asked by a reporter, how do you feel when you get to work and Shedeur Sanders is still on the board? And he says, we'll see how far he falls, which meant he was expecting him to continue to fall before they even got to the 5th round. All of this is publicly available. Every bit of it. It just seems to me that these people concocted a plan to hold back 17-32. And they needed a story. And the story was Coach Prime. And they didn't need the story for the Titans' first pick, which would make Shedeur 16. They needed the story. They needed the story for pick 17 to make sure he doesn't become the first Black quarterback drafted to Cleveland, to make sure he doesn't become a $46 million franchise QB. False pretenses. They needed a story. Coach Prime was the story. Do you see Coach Prime in Cleveland? Do you see what's happening to Shedeur in Cleveland? Then the draft was not about Coach Prime. The draft was about 17-32. It explains why Spencer Rattler, who's proved better than Tyler Shaw, is competing again, which gives Tyler Shaw another chance to get it right after he failed. Like at the last, it has to be the last resort to let Spencer Rattler be QB1. Spencer Rattler's Black. The NFL clearly goes by the 1-drop rule. It explains why Daniel Jones, who failed after 6 years, declining in the last 2 of those 6 years, was able to take Anthony Richardson, who was only drafted 2 years ago and who's Black, who was able to take his job. This is what's happening in broader society. Black people who earned the right to be where they are through education, hard work, and merit are having their jobs snatched from them, or being made to be evaluated or compete for them against people who don't have the education, who didn't get it based on merit. It's just purely skin color. It explains why Cam Ward, who they willing to pay guaranteed $48 million, drafted number 1 overall, is competing against the guy that failed last year. And when he got injured, the guy who's third string. They don't want to say he's the guaranteed starter, but they willing to give J.J. McCarthy the keys to the Minnesota Vikings and move all of the competition behind him away, Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, to make sure he has a clear path and guaranteed to be the starter with the keys to the organization. He's been in the league 2 years and had 0 seconds of film. It explains why Shedeur Sanders is being labeled a backup and a value pick. The same reason. 17-32. As white quarterbacks continue to be the minority, it's going to get worse. I showed you on the chart, they went from being paired up black quarterbacks on the same team to being triplets on the same team. Next, they're going to be quads on the same team. Anything to hold back the black quarterback, while white quarterbacks become the minority at the starting QB1 position. Gabriel was given a playbook immediately and tutored. Fact, because they know he got a learning curve. They are going to blackball Shedeur like Kaepernick. Fact. That's why I told you I don't see how this going to work out. But I see he's being held. I see it. And one thing about it, Shedeur going to get his money from the NFL. And I don't think he going to have to sue him for it. Don't forget, the NFL has 2 open racial discrimination cases. What are we describing when we talk about 17-32? Racial discrimination against black quarterbacks because white starting quarterbacks are becoming the minority. That's why. That's what it is. And it's already 2 open cases, and they settled 1 case of violation of civil rights against black quarterbacks, racial discrimination. It's 3 cases against the NFL for racial discrimination since 2021. That's a lot. And this is number 4. And this one is class action. It said, y'all watch Coach KS and thinking he gonna suppress 12, but on game day, first game 12 will be starter. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. And Chris Rogers, you're right. I posted that on X. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Understand this. It ain't Kevin. That's what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. Kevin Stefanski is too abhorrent in his treatment towards Shedeur. That's what Kevin Stefanski gonna be forced to do. Either that or a trade is going to be forcing Shedeur out of Cleveland. Everything is going public. More and more will continue to come out. I am livid over this. Yeah, it's bad. I said it earlier today before I said this is bad. Y'all just don't understand how bad this is. It said, I just hope the O-line doesn't get Shedeur injured. You mean like they tried it? You mean like they tried it in the Browns game when Kevin Stefanski called it? I mean, the Panthers game when Stefanski called that 4-1? Yeah. And 74 blew his coverage? Right. It said they tutored Dart and gave him the answers to the interview because they have a vested interest in Dylan Gabriel, Dart being better than Shedeur. 17-32. Yep. It said we have to pay attention to see if some slander or some old charges are filled somewhere on Dickerson. It probably gonna happen. It wouldn't surprise me. Look at how they started to treat Myles Garrett. Look at how they started to treat Myles Garrett. Understand, that's what it is, right? So, and that's why I pointed out Albert Breer, because I'm sitting there looking at him. I'm like, now he know damn well I knew what he had reported about Shedeur before. So, the fact that he's sitting there acting like it's nothing. No, he has a vested interest in it being nothing because he essentially repeated what the New York Giants said. So did the owners when they took him off the board. They all working together. The hit job and everything. It's actually documented. It was discussed after the draft that the NFL allowed people to run around and defame Shedeur in the draft. And this is what Eric Dickerson is talking about. This is what Mike Tomlin was saying was happening. There were these phone calls. Understand, these phone calls didn't take the place with Andrew Berry listening only. You saw how those green rooms are set up. That was intimidation to make sure Andrew Berry don't draft Shedeur, even though he was locked out of the first round, that he don't draft him in the second, third, or fourth. That's why he was taken off the board, to make sure that nobody get him, saying they're going to teach him a lesson. What lesson they was teaching Lamar Jackson when they did it to him? What lesson was they teaching to C.J. Stroud when they passed around his test results, trying to say he had lower cognitive functioning, which is just race norming off the heels of a plantation? Now they trying it with Shedeur. We know Shedeur has a high football IQ, and that has proven. That's why I told y'all, Shedeur don't have to play another snap for the Cleveland Browns. He's already proven he's QB1. They better fix this. They better fix it. Y'all was talking about why was Haslam out there? Because the noise is loud. You see what's happening now. So what you're looking at on your screen is a location, the team that black quarterbacks play for. The dark circle, the black circle, is the starters. We're at 15. With Cam, it was 16. But since, look down here with the Colts, they took Anthony Richardson's job, it's back to 15. The two red dots, Shedeur in Cleveland, being held back. That's a stop. Anthony Richardson job snatched. That's a stop. The yellow dot, Spencer Rattler. Again, he's proven he's QB1. Tyler Shaw even went to the Manning Passing Academy a month ago and still came back and bombed last week. But they want to give him another opportunity to get it right. Why is it so important that Tyler Shaw be QB1? Because Spencer Rattler going to tip these circles up here from 15 to 16. And all you have to do is let somebody go down in Cleveland. And Shedeur going to be 17, like he was supposed to be in the draft. That's why they're working overtime. This is about 17 to 32. Black starting quarterbacks, making sure it don't happen. They succeeded in the draft, and they're going to try to succeed in the season any way they can. That's why Shedeur is so far back. If he was QB2, he would easily get to QB1 because he's that good. You heard him? Oh, yeah, he's good. He's going to come in. He's accurate. He's this, his pocket presence, yada, yada, yada. All you're hearing is the good things about him that we already knew at Colorado, that they already knew pre-draft. He was forced there. So they can go play in somebody else's face. All this information is publicly available. All of it. At some point, you got to wonder when they're going to stop. But I don't think so. It's like they hell bent on it. They trying to manipulate who coming out of college in the first round next year. They're not going to have to compete. There are no white quarterbacks competing at all. Just elite or black starting quarterbacks, jobs in jeopardy. Chicago just paid their backup QB $10 million because they're going to take Caleb Williams' job. He next. That's what's happening here. Comments to see what y'all are saying before we get out of here for tonight. 313 of us. Hit the like button, hit the like button, hit the like button. I posted this chart that I created on X. If you've been hanging out with the podcast, you know I created one of these before the draft showing the 15 and who was there after free agency, the draft projections with Milroe to the Saints, Shedeur to the Steelers. But there were these phone calls. It said they definitely had it out for him because they know he's good. That's facts. That's really what it is. That's really what it is. And why they having it out for him and Spencer Rattler competing, and they're setting up coming in next year, having the first 4 quarterbacks come off the board to be white. They setting up Caleb Williams to take his job next. We're giving a backup from a D3 school who's white. $10 million contract for a backup. They hard at work. They hard at work. That's why nobody's calling for Shedeur. That's why no matter how many times Shedeur win or prove the best, they go hold him back. Kevin Stefanski describes himself as a servant leader of the Cleveland Browns. I'm pretty sure he's a servant leader of something else. All of that corruption, lies, and deception, and literally recorded because of their arrogance. Right. Everything is recorded. It said when they drafted him, they didn't say, hey, we got you. Congratulations. They immediately started talking to him. You got to come in here. You got to work. Right. They were shunning him from the start. I know he was like, didn't I just pre-draft with y'all? Imagine you spending months with somebody that want to hire you. Right. And they want to hire you for a good a bit money. It could just be $300,000. That's good money right now. Right. And then as y'all get to you had your last interview and you know, you get a call. Hey, we want to hire you for the same position, quarterback. But hey, look, we're going to pay you $4 million because we don't think you were worth it in the first round. I know we spent a lot of time with you. You know, you good. Yeah, we know you're going to do better than $4 million, but you know, that's what it is. I will be confused as hell. Matter of fact, I will be hurt. In fact, I would have a lump in my throat. I would have a lump in my throat. I would feel like I've been sucker punched. Like you really undervaluing me, so you hope I don't take the job. That's what that was. Because I think it was Jerry Rice's son who was supposed to go in the third round. He went dead last. When I looked up his contract numbers, Brandon Rice, remember we played against him at USC if you're a Colorado fan. I looked him up. He had no stats and no dollar signs, but he was on somebody's team. Because why? He was supposed to go high, and they lowballed him. I think they thought he would say, forget it. I think that's what they thought with Shedeur too. He would go undrafted free agent or as low for the lowest money, which is kind of what he has for the most part. He's just a little bit above undrafted free agent. But he happily signed his contract. Why? He told you he was growing in his faith. He know God opened the door for him and he had to walk through it. And he going to be in Cleveland till God opened the next door or part the Red Sea. Last time I said that, Tony encouraged him to walk out the tunnel with them together. And Tony was carrying a staff. And I said, damn, he just like Moses. Stay tuned. Because Eric Dickerson not going to be the last person to speak out. We at number 4 right now. We on the 4th person. Number 5 is going to show up with a similar story. And I'm sure they're going to use Chris Carter and his melanin to try to refute it. But Chris Carter sounds ridiculous. The owners compete. Why would they do that? No, they don't compete. It's already been proven they collude. In the 61-page document, they telling the new owner of the Denver Broncos, you can't give Russell Wilson his contract 2 years early and this kind of money because then everybody else going to want it. That's why Deshaun Watson ain't playing. They made it clear his contract is an anomaly. Can't nobody else get that. Not even the 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. And when he asked for it, just like Shedeur, no team wanted the 2-time MVP in free agency. It's little known. The Baltimore Ravens asked him what team he want to be traded to. They was going to trade Lamar Jackson before they give him guaranteed money. Like Deshaun Watson. You saw what happened to Russell Wilson on the field. When he was in Denver, you saw how Sean Payton treated him. Now you know why. And if you know Kyler Murray has a clause in his contract that says he has to watch films for so many hours a day, now you know why. Retaliation. Collusion is not new. It seems to be the favorite activity. Because why? They have so many media members willing to help them keep the lie going. When you tell one lie, you have to tell another. And they have told so many lies on Shedeur that every time the truth come out, they all going to have to stop everything, drop what they're doing, and try to refute it. But the problem is All of the evidence is publicly available to the general public to use at their disposal. Lawsuit, investigation, whatever. The secret's out. This is about black quarterbacks again. It's always been about black quarterbacks. I said black quarterbacks are in an abusive relationship with the NFL. And what you see happen to Shedeur, who brought 3 million fans and followers with him to witness that that's facts. He can't just get up and walk out now. So let's see if they're willing to turn him loose and waive him and release him from the NFL. Stay tuned. Juanita said they get on my nerves saying nothing is given. Shedeur has and is working, and they giving everything. Right, to Dylan Gabriel and Flacco. They talking to Shedeur like he working at Home Depot. Facts. Like he ain't nobody. It said he works hard, really good kid, but the other QBs at Cleveland don't have to work. Don't have to prove a thing, Dwayne. Flacco hasn't proven nothing. Dylan had, what's his name? The one that we haven't seen. He hadn't proven anything. Pickett. And Dylan has proven he a failure, and Shedeur still got to be behind Dylan. Racism. That's all it is. I totally agree, and I second what Jerome Wilkinson just stated. African-American billionaires, let's go. Yep. I think Steph Curry tried to buy into the Carolina Panthers and was rejected. Steph Curry. Let that sink in. Jerome Wilkinson. Shedeur was a millionaire before he was drafted. He had $1 million brand. He just wanted to play. That's it. And that's why they just want to play. Watch the Baylor game with Shedeur. Facts. And you would think listening to that pre-draft, right? You would think that they know. You would think they watched the video. To say it got to the point where we thought he was priced too high for the first round. That's Andrew Berry telling you before you go and find out that we were gonna get Shedeur, but it got to a point where he was too high. So you thought you could get it done with Dylan Gabriel and Flacco, and you already had Pickett. So you thought you would band-aid this season together and go get a white quarterback next season. That's what they thought. So he was telling you before you even knew. Yeah, we pre-draft with him extensively and we pivoted. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with coming back and paying the person for the same job for $40 million less and acting like you don't know who the hell he is and he got to prove it. Isn't that why you was going to get him at number 2? Because you knew? But now you don't know. That's fraud. That's fraud. They all guilty, Barry included. They wanted people to think, and him too, that he was in a vulnerable position and he'd be happy and take whatever, including a backup. I said Barry prides himself on getting athletes who are in vulnerable situations. Shedeur, even though they created the situation. Just like the NFL created the prank call opportunity by giving out Shedeur Sanders' number to 2,000 people, and it fell into the hands of somebody associated with the New York Giants. How convenient. It said these people are wicked. That's all it is. That's all it is. There's something mentally wrong. This is wicked. This is racism. This is that kind of racism that happened in the 30s, that happened in the 1860s, that happened in the 1700s. You black, you're not valuable, you don't belong. And since we can't turn you loose because you're going to go start your own because this is not 1960, we're going to draft you and bury you on the death chart and kill your career and snatch it away and give it to somebody else that already failed, who's not black. Just wicked. So if you have to earn a spot, how did Flacco earn it? He didn't. I mean, they are making it so Jim Crow blatant that Shedeur, the black man, has to earn it. And we just put Huntley over here so it don't look like we discriminate against Shedeur. I still see it. Because Shedeur is the only one that has to earn it. Flacco didn't earn nothing. Pickett didn't earn nothing. And Dylan failed. He shouldn't even be on the team. But he's clearly a favor to a friend and a cog and a wedge to block Shedeur to getting to Pickett and Flacco's spot. That's what Dillon is. They know he wasn't good. There's nothing that could make them think coming out of college that Dillon was better than Shedeur. These are supposed to be the experts in football. That means you should know that he would not succeed in the NFL. How many times will Shedeur's game translate to the NFL? Well, Dillon's haven't, but why is he still there? Shedeur did everything they asked. What did he say in this interview? I've done everything. He has. Now let's see if they're going to cut him. Remember, Stefanski said, unfortunately, we're going to have to put him down for a bit. Put him down? Oh, he a canine now? He a horse? Just the way that Stefanski degrades Shedeur in his speech or chooses to ignore him or overlook him tells you he got a problem. Helmets or hoods? Which one is going to be? Seem to be hoods right now. Two things can be true, good sister. Facts. Two things are true. Two things are true. Shedeur was the best quarterback coming out of college. And the Cleveland Browns was going to draft him at the number 2 overall pick. Both of those things are true. And now they act like they don't know who he is. And they drafted him at 144 like he's worthless. And every day they treat him like he's disposable. And he's done nothing. Nothing. But just work hard. Just work hard. So Eric Dickerson done dropped another bomb to add on with the rest, y'all. And we'll see if somebody else gonna talk. All you gonna hear is the media trying to say it's not true. They don't forget that these other 3 statements are already out here. Somebody else gonna drop a bomb. I mean, really, I don't need nothing else. I don't need nothing else. Like a judge say, you ready to rest your case? Because I don't need nothing else. I've seen enough. I've seen enough. I mean, what happened to him in the draft didn't even make sense. To this day, Shedeur is still a first-round projected QB. That means what Eric Dickerson said is facts. They trying to teach him a lesson. Oh, yeah? What you trying to teach Lamar Jackson? What you trying to teach Caleb Williams? What you trying to teach Marlon Briscoe, Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick, Russell Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, Geno Smith, Jameis Winston, Spencer Rattler, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Jalen Hurts, Malik Willis, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Jacoby Brissett, Justin Fields, RG3. What you try to teach them? Deshaun Watson. He asked for a trade. So we're going to get out of here. We just wanted to share the latest with Eric Dickerson, telling the truth. Be ready for, the Chris Carters of the world and the Albert Breers to run around and call it a conspiracy. But, the facts just keep on stacking, right? The facts keep on stacking. And the facts that all the statements that were said by Boomer Esiason, Mike Tomlin, Mel Kiper Jr., and Eric Dickerson aligned to the despicable way that Kevin Stefanski and the Browns are treating Shedeur, including Haslam, who's allowing it, and also said, very careless with his words, Shedeur wasn't my pick. Yeah, we know. Y'all took him off the board. We got it. Yep. So we're going to see y'all later. We shall see y'all later. We'll be back tomorrow. Dawn Simber says she appreciates Mr. Dickerson. I think a lot of people do, because a lot of people know that what's happening in Cleveland not making any sense. And that, hearing people say Shedeur's being blackballed and people have been talking about it, he's not going to be the last one to come out. It explains why he's being treated that way, right? Whether they want to teach him a lesson or not, they didn't have a right to treat him like they did. And if they knew they didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, then they should have invited him to the combine, because they knew that, and it was stated before the combine. Everything else was just a plot to destroy. So I'm going to get out of here. Y'all have a good night. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your engagement. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the like button on the way out if you haven't already. Thanks for watching What She Said Sports. Thank you for watching What She Said Sports. Be sure to join our daily live stream and listen up to What She Said Sports on the go on Spotify. Thank you for watching What She Said Sports. Stay for another video.